Nrupesh, why don't you, tell us what your topic's going to be today. Let's start there.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to get into trouble with the DMO here because that's the government-owned entity. But I'm sure that they're doing their best. Unfortunately, with DMOs, while we are at that topic, they've got a lot of mandates and regulations and protocols they have to follow. So for them to come up with a strategy on a country level, it takes a long time. But within this time, if the other smaller companies and tourism personnel can work together and work on their own individual plans, that helps a lot more going forward. And when I start with my points, if at any stage anybody wants to jump in, please, I would love to have your comments on that as well. But I know a lot of people who are following these chats are from small SMEs, small medium enterprises, and just on the phases when I start, I would like to say, like, for someone to come to this stage in planning for 3 months or 5 months, it takes a big disruption in the whole industry, which is what has happened now. And it's a crisis, which can be, it's the scale of the crisis, the nature of the crisis, extent of the crisis, the time frame, affected sectors, because it's not just tourism, it's everything else around it. And where are we at the crisis, or what stage it is at, and how far is it going to go? Based on all this, a lot of things a company must look at, again, positively, plan a strategic action going forward. It has happened, it's around the world. So there's no use complaining now and like every other post is about COVID. So we're not going to even talk on that. Like you said, this is not about that. We're going to look at what smaller companies, lodges, activities, tour operators, even the ones that have scaled down. I mean, like Wild Dog Safaris, a lot of big companies will have to eventually now scale down, start from a smaller team, refocus, re-strategize, and then grow back again to where they were. Luckily, hopefully it will be quicker to grow back into the same position. A lot of the strategies would be first around thinking positive. Thinking that, this has happened. It's not just us, it's not just Namibia, not Africa, it's the world. So the whole dynamic has changed. And looking at that, now you must look from outside in and say, okay, my company focuses on 90% foreign tourists, 10% locals. From the 90%, 20% is luxury, rest is mid-range, 20% budget travelers. What is it that in the last 2 years made me the most profits? Which sector, which segment? So it's time to reflect on the last 2 years in terms of performance, and then focus on what made you the most profits and which clients were the most happy with your service. Look at the reviews that you got online, because luxury travelers, you think they only account for 20% of your visitors, but their reviews might affect a lot of other people's opinions of you because they're too picky, for example. So those things you have to look at and understand that, okay, it's budget travelers who make us more turnover. So let's focus on that. Secondly, marketing, which is a huge problem in Africa, if I say the whole continent. They don't have proper avenues, companies, channels to market themselves, because a lot of the entities here depend on tour agents or tour operators. So it can be tour agents who then depend on tour operators, or it's tour operators who then depend on agents overseas. So now everybody has to rethink their marketing strategy. And this adds a lot more to it because it works differently in Africa compared to other places. We don't have Expedia here. It's all on TripAdvisor, they also charge a lot. And then it's booking.com, which is really not only for hotels and venues, not for tour operators.
And charges a lot.
And charges a lot, of course.
At least it does over here, yeah.
And so this is what kind of has to change. A lot of the bigger companies or the bigger tour operators used to work with the smaller companies who used to then work with the lodges. So we also depended on a lot of the local tour operators. But the local tour operators depended more on us than we did on them. For example, and that's the hierarchy kind of in Africa. And that is slowly changing, because what we decided to look at is, in this time, what can we as a tourism market do to, look at local tourists, for example. That is how the initiative started. And what that showed is, yes, even though local tourists initially felt ignored last few years, long time, now they do appreciate that there are good deals. But at the same time, the tour operators who were doing international tours have now come up with local tours, which they had never done before. So, they talk to the lodges who are offering specials, and they talk to the activities suppliers like hot air ballooning or something, and they come up with their own tours. They're using their tour vehicles for local tourism. And it might not bring them a full load of people, but it's still working. But now when we talk of a DMO and going forward, a lot of the mindsets will change. That, why do we need to depend on this one company who does this? Why can't we do our own trips directly with the local suppliers and, repackaging deals at better rates and with a better synergy with local companies? Because suddenly everybody finds themselves kind of on the same playing field because of no tourists. I mean, the country's closed down. So that is what I would tell people, like, look at it as a positive thing, because there'll be a lot of new partnerships that will be formed. There'll be a lot of new packages that will come out of it that nobody has thought of combining before. And this will, from what I have seen, will grow into a lot. But at the same time, if you come back to the 90-day plan, what do you do in these 90 days? I mean, we've already had 6 weeks of lockdown. We might have another 2-3 weeks of relaxed circumstances, and then we go on. But South Africa has basically said the country will open the borders in 2021, January or February, to international travel. That's a long time from now. So what do? Do you, let's look at working with other countries like Tanzania, who have opened up their borders. So if we do open up, or when we do open up, start flights to those countries. And, let's start receiving people from everywhere instead of just the luxury clients or just the European clients or just the Chinese market. Let's look at Africa also as a place where you have tourists. Nigeria, for example, last year, they spent $5.5 billion on outbound tourism. So that's huge. That's huge. And, so this is the time to look at the new markets, look at the strategies on marketing in those places that you have never marketed before. One thing we talked about, Eric, was when you do online marketing now, a lot of the keywords are much cheaper now than they used to be on Google. And take advantage of that. Even if it's
I want to break it and clarify for anybody that's watching. When we say they're much cheaper, we mean within the context of COVID. So what we've seen, we've run ads in different industries, and it's actually been a drop of 5 times. So we used to pay 5 times more for an ad in the digital world than we do now. Basically, it's starting to climb up a little bit. So basically, you have a very brief window of opportunity right here to say, if you're going to try digital, you might as well try in the cheapest time that it's ever been in the last 5-6 years for sure, maybe even longer than that.
At least, and if you pay in a bit more and you get to the top, at least the front page, it again, once after 3 months, when people start traveling again, they'll have to pay a lot more to get you out of the front page. So that's something people must look at. Like I said, step back. When you plan for a relaunch, look at not just your company, look at the efficiency of your personnel. If you're refocusing on a different market, let's look at training the personnel now on that market or that side of things, instead of waiting till the market's open and learning from experience. Start doing new courses for the people, hospitality courses, guiding courses, anything, that everything is available online. So if you still have guides working for you, get them some courses online that most of them are free now for this period. Let them learn some new things, new cultural things. Say if a guy comes from China, how do you treat them? What are the basic Chinese words, Japanese words? Try, be more proactive in doing something this time than just waiting for the doors to open, because then you've already lost a lot of time. Second thing, identify the new markets. Go back to your books, your bookings. see where you got the most people from, how you got them from, through agents or through website, what marketing worked before, focus on that. And if most of your people were Germans, start advertising in German. It's simple, but do it now than waiting. One other thing is brand identity. A lot of people are stuck with older identity in the sense of logo, branding, just the look. And they never had time to change it, worrying that, yeah, but tourists might not find us. And this is the right time to change the name if you want to, like, it's just a word in the name, or a logo if you want to make it minimalistic, and do something new and modern where it attracts more younger people. I said diversifying the market. Work more closely with the local industry. I've seen in a few countries now that even though you're in the same business, you've known each other for years, you've never even looked at opportunities to work with each other because you never thought there would be a way to. But now that you have some time, call people you've known for years in industry. Say, look, what can we do now? Working together. What packages can we come up with together? I have the vehicles, you have the guides. Let's combine something together. So getting back on the feet is quicker. It's more cost effective. And so I think those things. And I don't know if it's something that we have been looking at. We have been looking at something like vouchers and coupons. But I don't know how it will work. It's been working in Canada or America, for example, because here I don't see anyone using it yet for future travels.
It depends. I don't know if you're asking me a question or not.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, because if it's something like if we are inviting people or we expecting tourists from other countries and they are used to having the coupons and vouchers there, but my talk is also aimed at a lot of African companies who might want to know, is this something that's actually succeeding? Canada is succeeding at, or America succeeding at, or have you guys not really thought of it?
I know that the conversation around vouchers and coupons early on was pretty strong. That was one of the first things that any tourism operator, whether they were running a destination, a resort, or a lodge, or whether they were a tour company, was looking at. Well, it was looking at mitigating cancellations, obviously, right? So
Yes.
They was saying, oh, we're getting a ton of cancellations. Rather than just refunding the money, why don't we give them a voucher, a coupon, because that allows us to keep the money. I know that there were a number of industries. I'm going to say, just in the talks I've had, mainly the talks that I have had with operators, whether they were destinations or tour operators, were primarily in North America or in Europe. And when it came to vouchers, there was a lot of talk of vouchers, and yet when it came to the actual execution of it, the guests didn't really care for a voucher. There was just, the conversation basically went one of two ways with the guests. They either said, we still want our money back, or we don't need a voucher. Let's just we'll just see how it goes. And when it comes to booking, maybe we'll look at rebooking later in the following year. So as it's actually playing out, I can speak to a very microcosm or a micro example, which is our own resort. With our own resort, we offered vouchers in the beginning. No one really seemed to want the vouchers. And they did in other industries, they did. But for us, they didn't really seem to want the vouchers. They just, either they wanted a refund, which was actually for us surprisingly rare, or they just said, why don't we just look at rebooking next year? Just put us on the roster. Basically, we put them on a list and they say, let's look at when we can come back next year.
Yeah, that's something I've seen some countries try to do it nationally in Europe. I don't know how successful that has been. And we did have a few chats in Namibia about it. And I just wanted them to also hear from someone like yourself to show them it's about your trust and your clients. And if they're really cash strapped and they need the money back, they might say, look, we need a refund. Or if they say, no, it's fine, we wait, then there's no need for vouchers. I also think having a national voucher system, I don't know how well managed that would be.
Yeah, I having a national managed voucher system, I wouldn't trust it in Canada. And I'm not that familiar with Namibia, but I've been there a few times and I have family over there. And I don't know that I would trust the national government to have a voucher system over there either.
Well,
So,
it's Africa. It's Africa. I'm not
yeah,
going to say anything more.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
coming back
yeah.
to
Well, like I
coming.
said, I don't know that I would even trust it to work that well in Canada. So
So,
yeah, yeah.
other thing is, um, don't cut your prices. This is something I've heard a lot on different seminars, webinars. Don't don't have discounts for foreign tourists now just to get a piece of the pie, hoping that they would book next year for a cheaper price, because you'll find it next to impossible to go back up when the time comes. And that will hurt your business more than it will help your business. And this is why we're looking at the strategy where, you can have any price you want for locals. But when the tourists start coming in and they find the local price, you can always say, yeah, but this is a Namibian price. This is only for Namibian citizens. And that only if you clarify it that way, it will work. But if your website says 50% off now, if you book now, you might forget to take the ad off, for example. Or you might have listed it on 20 websites and 2 are still listing it next year. And they will hold you accountable if you're still using that price that time. So there's a lot of challenges when it comes to going down and then going back up. And it's also you're taking in a lot of losses, which you shouldn't. But it's
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something. Some of the people are like, yeah, but we need the business. It's fine, but when the business starts booming, everybody else will be doing a lot more, and you will be forced to sell it at that price.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't go from a company selling at 50% to suddenly doubling it over a period of a month, because then people also won't like that. Because I'm telling my friends like, you know what, go to this place in this country and it's 50% off. But a week later he starts booking it, but it's now double the price because people have started coming.
It's a dangerous. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go for it. Yeah, it is.
I was just going to expand on that point for the attendees watching. I think it's really important to know exactly what you said, but one of the major problems is that when you do discount, all the other third parties that hear about that discount, like you said, if you're listing on other sites or the tour companies or whatever, they start to get it in their heads, oh, this person can operate at that level.
Yes.
And the truth is you can't. You're going to run yourself raw. You're going to run your business into the ground if you continue operating at those prices. So yeah, that's a dangerous position.
Yeah, you're basically exposing your profits to everyone,
mm-hmm.
Which is something one must not do. And the other thing is, this is the best time to renegotiate with all the OTAs and your agents, intermediaries, everyone. Go back to every one of them, including TripAdvisor. If you were the highest rated or one of the top ones there, tell TripAdvisor, sorry, we can't pay you 20% when we start up.
Mm.
We can only pay you 5% for now. Yeah. Let's renegotiate the terms, because they need your business more than you need theirs when you start up. People will have a different strategy. The whole mindset will have changed. So this is where I said, go back to everyone you have contracts with. They will also understand, because they've been losing business. I mean, TripAdvisor already, I think them splitting with Viator has had a lot of repercussions, splitting at the wrong time actually. But yeah, so all those things you must start looking at. That's in terms of strategy on how you work. In terms of marketing,
I'm just going to pause you just for a sec, Nrupesh. We got a question in, and I want to just remind you as an attendee, we definitely want to answer those questions. However, for the talks, we're going to save those questions to the end. So stick around till the end of the talk, and then we'll address the questions as they come in. So if you have a question that pops up in your mind, we will answer those, but we have a time allocated at the end of each talk. So just put it in there and we'll come back to it. Okay, sorry,
perfect,
go ahead
thanks.
with marketing.
No worries, absolutely. Well, yeah, so with marketing, I did that with Wild Duck Safaris last year. We had a lot of chats on it, Eric. We literally overnight, the moment I joined, I said, we stop paying everyone. Google, online ads, let's stop paying everyone. First, you reanalyze what it is that has been getting you clients. And then you decide where you focus, start off slow. And, just paying a company a lot of money doesn't work these days. I think it hasn't worked last few years now, where you just pay Google a ton lot of money and you expect people to come to your website. It doesn't work. There's a whole lot of different aspects to it, how people find you, how your reputation is managed online. Some people think having 4 different websites with the same content helps. It doesn't. So a lot of these things now is the time to reanalyze this and focus on 1 or 2 things. You don't have to go with an expensive social media company. Go with somebody who just can do it for you, who knows the basics, but let them give you the analytic reports in a simple language. For example, now spending anything online won't work because people won't travel for the 90 days. So don't overspend online. Rather spend time and energy on your social media pages, on your business pages, on your LinkedIn profiles, on your own website. Spend more time on your website, redefine it, write articles on Namibia or any destination on the website, because that content is going to get you more clients than paying money to Google, because that's how Google finds you, through the keywords and the articles listed on it. Secondly, booking channels. Cut down on some of the booking channels that have never helped you before. I know a lot of people use so many different booking channels, maybe 20 different ones, some companies, and just keeping a track of that, what contracts you've signed with everyone. Start talking to everyone, renegotiate, tell them, look, we want to pull out for now and we'll come back once we're ready to go big. Because you also don't want to be in a position where you were very big and suddenly the tourism starts, you get hundreds and thousands of inquiries, but now you don't have a staff to answer them because, last few months, many people have to be retrenched, unfortunately. And when you don't reply to people, it also looks bad and you won't get the clients back. So, there's a downside to it, to going big immediately, and you cannot handle the inquiries. So know what you can manage, know what your capacity is, and work on that. Don't try to be, sorry, again, it goes against your topic today, how to be the number 1. But but don't try to be the biggest.
No.
Yeah.
That's really a key point. I don't think when I wrote that title, I never had the connotation of being the biggest. So when I talk about being number 1,
yes,
it's being the best in your category and whatever you choose that to be.
Absolutely.
So your niche, not being the biggest. It's being really delivering the best experience in that space.
Absolutely. Fill up your quota, whatever you can. If you have 20 rooms, that's all you can do. Target that. Don't put in so much work and money into getting 1,000 rooms, because then you look bad. People will start giving negative reviews. Third is, one of the things is advertising budgets. Look at it, because people, after 5 or 6 or 7 years of doing a lot of different avenues, marketing in different websites and all, you tend to lose track of where you spend the most, because most of them don't do a monthly audit on, I've spent so much to Google, so much to Facebook, so much to this guy for the website, so much for domain name. Go look back at those costs, because people will be surprised how much they've been paying when you actually look back at the last few years. There was a company that had paid 100,000 euros a year for Google ads only. And that didn't bring them so much, for example. You can use that money in something else. Right now, save any money you can on just marketing, put it on training your employees, training the staff. As owner of an SME, go online. Facebook has something called Facebook Blueprint. I don't know if a lot of people know about that. Facebook Blueprint is a whole training session. It's free for anyone who wants to learn how Facebook works. Pages, ads, every section, and there's tests, and they give you certificates, and it's free. So start doing that yourself if you're an SME, instead of a lot of people try and calling you and say, yeah, but you can pay me X amount and I'll do it for you. Because unfortunately, this is the time when a lot of companies, inexperienced companies, take advantage of resorts, lodges, or tour operators, saying, you know what, we will make sure you're fully booked as soon as doors open. but you need to pay us so much.
Mm.
And that has been happening all over Africa, not just Namibia, where people don't have a lot of choices. So I tell just go online and start learning it for yourself. And then you tell the company, you know what, I need you to do the content. I will manage it. It's easier. So there's a lot of different things one must look at for the next 90 days. Safety of the tourists, one thing we have really touched on, and yes, even though we're not supposed to talk about
Actually, Nrupesh, I know I shouldn't be cutting you off, but
No, go for it, please.
I want you to go ahead. But there's a point, I'm going to back it up to a point that you just
Okay.
made that I think is really important. So I
Please,
want,
yeah.
I want the
please do.
attendees to really understand the importance of what you said, which really, if I'm going to summarize a lot of what you said, focusing on the marketing, if you run a business, if you are the owner of a business or a manager, but definitely if you're the owner of a business, I think often, this is what I've seen with my clients. A lot of people don't know this necessarily about me, but I ran a fairly large marketing consulting company. We had thousands of clients. If you looked at all the clients within the company, I personally, in my time, worked with about 300 companies. And so I'm going to share with you just a pattern I saw in the mindset of the individuals that I worked with, and the ones that succeeded versus the ones that still struggled when we were working with them. And the key difference there was that the business owners that understood that their primary job was to actually expand and grow the company. Their job is growth. How do we get better at what we do? How do we create a better experience for our customer or client or a guest? And how do we get out there? If that primary mindset is that my responsibility is the growth of the company, then the company grows. If the mindset is my primary responsibility is the running of the company, which means it's operational, like I need to run the company every day. Unfortunately, what typically happens in that scenario, if all you're doing is focusing on the running of the company, it doesn't grow, it just runs. And that has you in a position where you don't have the choice to do the work. There might be things that you love about your job, but if you're the owner of a business, there's probably a number of things that you don't love about that necessarily either. And so if you want to get yourself out of that position, you have to have a growth mindset. And the question that Nrupesh is really harping on here is, if you want to grow your company, what's the best way of doing that? Well, it's understanding marketing. And it doesn't necessarily mean, and I think you touched on this too, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do everything marketing yourself, but you should have an understanding of it, so that maybe there are portions that you do internally, and maybe there are portions you say, we will trust this to somebody external, but at least I have an understanding of how they're doing it properly, so we're getting return on investment. And having that mindset, I have a growth mindset, and if I'm going to grow, the best way of looking at that is marketing. So you see yourself as the owner of a company, you see yourself as a marketer first and an operator second. And unfortunately, most companies are the other way around, and that's why they struggle to grow. So really good point, Nrupesh. I just wanted to really illustrate the importance of what you're talking about there.
Look, yeah, my point of view is also because my background is digital strategies and social media, networking, marketing. I also feel guilty sometimes when, or I feel bad for people sometimes when I've seen so many other companies have taken advantage of that. And and now, just to try to explain them simple thing like domain name, hosting, and how everything connects to each other. And you see how these other companies have just been paid so much for doing nothing. Some people there have been companies who are working for Namibian companies. They've never been to Namibia. They sit in Europe somewhere, and they're marketing Namibia as a keyword. And this is an example I think everybody should know. I mean, they're marketing Namibia as a destination for honeymoon beach holidays. And for that keyword, or Africa honeymoon holidays, that keyword, you end up paying 200 or 300 euros per click. And that's huge. But these companies don't give you those feedback and analytics on what happened, because you as an owner also might say, you know what, I don't understand that. So, go to Facebook Blueprint. LinkedIn has the same thing. Understand how the systems work. And then when somebody comes to you, you can actually counter argue and say, look, you know what, but what about this? What about this? The perfect example I will give you is Wild Dog Safaris. And this is also for everyone listening here. There was another company doing it last year, which was overseas. And they said, yeah, they're charging quite a lot. And also they were like, yeah, all the technical terms. People always want to confuse you with the technical words,
Mm-hmm.
CTC, CTP, everything, and PTC and everything. And, we had a meeting, and after they went through the whole thing, I said, I just want to know one thing. What are people searching for on Google to find us? And it turns out about 70% of the people were actually searching for wild dog safaris. So I said, then the company people know us. Then why do we need you?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, rather
And
focus.
That's huge.
That's huge. That's massive.
Knowing that, yeah. Even just knowing to ask that question.
Absolutely. So ask the critical questions and understand where your clients come from. Even if it's a company running it for you, first question you ask them: show me a breakdown of where the clients are coming from, how they are finding us. Forget about everything else. And the other thing in tourism, especially in Africa, I'm sure it's in the other places as well, the flow of tourists. If I'm a family in Spain, for example, and I want to go to Namibia, it's either through friends or I go on Google or search engines and I search for Namibia travel safaris, Namibia family safaris, or a few of the keywords. Usually the first four is TripAdvisor, Booking.com, if you're looking for accommodation, but otherwise it's a few of the travel companies' websites. So you go to TripAdvisor or you go to this top 10 lists of top 10 companies in Namibia. Then people go through your pages. If you're a lodge or a accommodation place, and I know they're also listening in, then people might go to Booking.com or what is the other one? Some of them are listed on Airbnb now, but TripAdvisor also lists Booking, but there's another big one.
TripAdvisor.
Hotels.com. Hotels.com sometimes. Expedia doesn't really function in Africa. But those websites will list top 10, top 20 in Namibia. So people go there first after Google. They don't go to the company websites to see first. So they go to TripAdvisor. Then they will go through, they'll filter it down to what they need. Then they'll see the 5 companies or 10 companies. And then they Google each of them. And this is the flow I have seen so far in the last year and a half. Is they go to Google, they go to TripAdvisor, Wild Dog is number 3 there. But again, their algorithm is not the best because the first one is a horse riding safari in Windhoek. So Wild Dog Safaris, then they go to Google, they search for Wild Dog Safaris. Then they see how many websites you're listed on. And that gives them a trust saying, okay, you know what, this is a good company because it's listed so many places. So people need to know this is how customers find you. By paying Google or having the best website in the world doesn't help because people won't really find you directly through that.
Yeah, that's I want to pause on that point as well. That's a really, really key point that we found. So I want to bring this up for the attendees listening to essentially 2 marketing guys talk about this and understand that SEO used to be the strongest point that we used in our own resort to get bookings in. But yeah, we have been absolutely pushed down all by third-party companies that are much larger than we individually could be. And so you need to know that if you're spending tons of money on SEO, that there are better ways of using that money in marketing. And you should take a strong look if that's your core method is like, oh, we're going to spend tons of money on SEO because we need to put money into Google AdWords. I would ask you to relook at that. There was a time when that worked really well for us. The great irony for us is that the time that it worked really well in SEO, we didn't have to pay for SEO. And then now, as soon as we have to pay for SEO, it's not the best method to use anymore. And there's ways of circumnavigating that. I think also, if you're listening to this, a really good person to probably talk to this might be Chris Torres, who I believe is actually on. But he's going to be talking to circumnavigating that whole thing. So what you talked about, Nrupesh, absolutely is what we're seeing here as well. But there's actually ways of getting around that too, going directly to the consumer. And so I think Chris is going to talk to that a little bit. And I know I for sure will. I'll be talking about what we as a small lodge have done specifically to be very, very efficient with how we book ourselves out and do that really effectively. And it doesn't involve paying SEO companies. So sorry, keep going.
No, absolutely. Please, Dad, you must just jump in whenever you think it's right. You mentioned Chris, and he just left.
He's gone now. Yeah, he'll be back.
um, but also on that, having listed on Google Maps, people don't realize how important it is to be listed on Google Maps and to actually own the listing,
Mhm.
which is more important than being listed, because then you can put up your specials, offers, everything on Google Maps. And I think almost 98%, 99% of the companies in Africa don't go to that level of owning the listing, updating the listing, um, pushing out specials there. They have an option of actually booking directly through Google Maps. So, you actually come first on Google. If somebody searches Wild Dog Safaris, for example, you will see the trips immediately without going to any website. So you click on Google, just immediately the trips pop up, link on it, goes through the trip, then it takes you to the website, which already eliminates people going to any third-party website. It's right there. As they search it, it pops up. So, whoever is listing, make sure you own your own Google listing. Google has started something called Smart Ads. I don't know if you've used it, Eric, yet.
No.
It actually popped up, I think a few months ago, just like that. Do you want to make a smart ad? I'm like, yeah, okay. And then it doesn't ask you like Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It's a smart ad like Facebook. Just put in a few things. It's not on keywords. It's on your company.
Yeah.
And that has worked very well for us. Sorry, you were saying? Yeah?
No. I haven't used it in Google, but I have used Facebook's version, which you put in your 10 variables and then it mixes and matches to find out.
Yes. So now Google has also Google has also initiated that, and it's not the easiest to find, but what it does is, then you get pushed on Android games and Android ads and all the Google products, not just search engine. And it's not really a sponsored ad. So you don't only come up on sponsored ads because of the keywords. You just, define a different demographic, countries like Facebook, and it pops up on any device, Google device they're using. So it's a very unique way. Like my son has seen Wild Dog ad while he was playing some game as well. So it's try to explore those things. Spend time on analytics, click on everything, learn, and that's what I would tell everyone. Just spend time learning. Don't depend on third parties for that. There is a lot more. One is it's taking a step back. Going forward 90 days, even if tourism opens in 90 days or later, we're going to see a lot of discrimination against a lot of countries. And this is very critical that we train the staff from management to anyone that is avoided. Because yes, there have been a number of cases in a lot of countries. I know we're not supposed to touch on it, but that has a huge implication on the next 90 days as borders open up. Because we will, see people saying, oh, but they're from China, or they're from this place. We don't want them. So they might reject the booking. And that is a big concern. We have also chatted about here on how to deal with that, because that comes down to education. Because it's a fear factor right now that it has come from a few countries, but the realities are very different. So something we need to really focus on in any industry, I think, lodges, resorts, because you don't want to feel unwanted when you go to any safari or anywhere where the guide doesn't really want to stay next to you because you're from a certain area or something. So that's something we have to be very careful. And that comes back to the tour operator and the whole channel, where from day one, everything is kind of, what's the word for it? It's like, you maintain the standards, hygiene standards and everything. Make sure everything is prepared. You're prepared for all those things. Rather spend money on that as well to make sure the hygiene and the feeling as you go in is like, okay, now this looks like a safe place. Then, having parties or some big events in a place, and while there's some luxury travelers in a lodge next door. And, I think stuff like that happens. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe just pausing on that for a second as well, because I think touching on that point with racism and even the point to luxury travelers being in one part and then maybe partying or whatever going on next door, in all those cases, because those are things that we've dealt with, and a lot of people are not really willing to have those discussions. And I will openly say, and maybe I shouldn't, but I will openly say that there are certain discussions we've had, behind closed doors at the resort saying, there are certain areas that we don't necessarily want to advertise to or bring guests from, because of, and this is where a lot of it comes from, is because when you have taken them in the past, there's a certain set of patterns that continue to happen. And that's where a lot of racism comes from. So as opposed to saying we're not taking them, what we did is we just said, we're switching the way we look at this, and we're going to be very, very defined with our culture, the way that we operate here. And if you want to come and stay with us and have an experience with us, this is the environment you're going to be in. And this is the culture that you're going to have to work with us. Obviously, you have to build that as a respectful culture and a culture that's positive. But as opposed to saying we're not taking anybody, we'll take anybody from any country, but we are very clear. We actually have a set process that we take them through before they even arrive with us, where we educate them on our culture and the way that we operate here, so that it's a lot more synergistic when they actually arrive.
Okay. Well, that's something that's great, because it helps us look at those aspects. Like you've been to Namibia, Eric, so there are a lot of Namibian companies listening. So I would like to say that as well. We always focus on other countries' culture. So if I'm going to Japan, for example, I would love to, usually you read up what's allowed, what's not allowed, what you can do, what you shouldn't do, things like that. But in Africa, not many people have actually enforced that. And I said, it's time we actually start using that also as one of the process where, we tell people, here our culture is, and I know it is also in a lot of neighboring countries, you start a conversation before you say what you want to say. So if you come to the immigration, you say, hello, how are you? How's the day? You smile, you start the conversation, and then you start, because that's the culture here. You go to a supermarket, you start talking. You don't come to the point immediately. It doesn't matter who you talk to. You ask each other, how are you, like 10 times a day if you talk to each other, 10 times a day. And that has never been translated. So what we always think is, what, it's Namibian immigration or Namibian or African, the people here, they don't, they don't treat you nicely. It's because they haven't been spoken to first. I think that's one of what I'm trying to say. And it's a very deep-rooted culture here. You don't pick up a phone and say, hi, can I talk to this person? You don't. You say, hi, how are you? How's the day? You talk to you, and then you start talking about what it is, even if it's an emergency. And I said, it's time we start training tourists as well, because they will have a much better experience. And I'm sure Michelle might also say a few things about that. Last 2 points before we go on question answers here. One is when we talked about, how do we get clients back, or how do we now advertise? One thing, in Africa, in Namibia, Africa, most of the companies, tour operators, the margins, lodges, tour operators, it's quite high what they give to agents. In the sense that
it's huge, yeah.
It's huge. So like I say, let's say if you're giving 15% to an agent in another country, and you're a tour operator, I would say rather look at a local company first, who is an agent. Let them also become your agent. Give them 15% and tell them that you can share from that with someone else in overseas. But we're giving you the first option, because then the profits stay in the country. That's the one thing. But also, we have never utilized clients for referrals. I don't know anyone who has. So if you're paying 15% to an agent, why don't you give client a 10% discount when they come back? Or for referring a group. If you come here, like you come here with a motorcycle, with friends of yours and stuff, you go back and you find somebody else from another city in Canada or America, and you say, go to them. And then you're getting some referral fees out of it, which I'll gladly, instead of putting in an effort to find another group, you have done the work. So, we should look at those kind of programs to start initiating mouth-to-mouth, word of mouth advertising, which has not been focused on before.
One thing I'll touch on that we saw as a really good hack, if you will, to that point, and then we'll jump into questions here. But when it comes to referrals, we have tried giving you get 10% or a percentage, and in theory that sounds really good. And I can go into, I've got a whole lecture on referrals and how to create really effective referrals. But what we found is the best method is if you actually just send that person a gift. So if you found out that they give you a referral, if you can give them a gift, especially if it's a personalized gift, they're much more likely to refer you from a personalized $10 to $20 mug than if you sent them a few $100 in referral money. We've seen it as being more effective and actually a lot cheaper. So just something that, at least for us, that we've seen, actually in a lot of my clients as well, we've seen that being much more effective.
Okay, but I mean, I'm busy looking at a good referral platform for Namibian companies to use that. If you know something, we'll chat on that later, because, you know, they don't have a platform right now. Yeah.
There are softwares out there, and
yes.
there's factors, there's relationship factors that come into play with all
Absolutely.
of this. So like I said, that's a whole nother lecture. Let's jump into questions though.
Just one more point quickly, Eric. I've written it down here. Also, look at your sources. If you're a lodge or resort in Namibia, hotel or campsite, look at where you're buying your products from. And that's where your biggest cost cutting will come in. A lot of companies are used to buying from big supermarkets, but last 3 months have shown us that there's so many local producers of goods that are cheaper, faster, you know, it's more organic, it's produced locally. And start looking at supporting local suppliers, because they form an important part in the whole chain of industry. So, you know, go back up to that point. Where you're buying from, are the locals? You know, because the more you support them, that's the only way the whole industry grows. Because if somebody in the whole chain feels left out, it just doesn't work efficiently. Yeah. So yeah, that's all. Thanks a lot.
One last point I'll throw in there, Nrupesh, that you and I talked about, and I thought you talked about a little bit more in this talk, was looking at marketing to children in other countries. So maybe if you just touch on that.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. No, I did write it down. I thought maybe there's not enough time, or it's not the right talk for it. Okay, this is for Africa or the countries where there's more tourism incoming than outgoing. Let me put it that way. So what we started now in Namibia is, and it's worked great, is we went to the conservancies and the foundations, take rehabilitation center for animals, people who are doing research on animals. And this was just about 2.5 weeks ago, where we just brainstormed and said, why don't we integrate education as part of tourism, which is not done often, because the kids are in lockdown. Kids still want to know about other countries. You know, what's happening, where is Namibia? Most people don't even know where is Namibia. And so we started a couple of sessions. Then we started getting inquiries from UK and a couple of places saying, yeah, but this sounds awesome. Can you do it privately for our kids? And we did one about 3 days ago. We had 32 kids from one class from UK, and we had a session on pangolins. I mean, most have never even heard of pangolins, let alone see a photo.
Yeah.
And it went so amazing, where kids had the weirdest questions, which is always fun. But at the same time, they were going to tell their parents the next day, whenever we can travel, we want to go to Namibia. We want to see pangolins. It happened in local tourism as well, where we had a session on pangolins, the first one as a trial session. And the next weekend, the place was packed with families, because all the kids wanted to see pangolins.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And people, you know, this is where we can now start marketing a destination through education. Whatever means, you know, you can. If you say you've got 10 friends or 20 friends on a WhatsApp group, like, let's get the kids together and show them something about Namibia. And there's a huge difference between watching a live video on YouTube, or a video on YouTube versus a live session where you can ask questions, you can see how they do things and everything. So that's one of the things we are looking at. And I think that will be a big part of going forward with homeschooling and other aspects coming into play. Yeah. So,
yeah, that was a really, really key point. And I'm sure you could expand on that quite a bit from there, but I thought that was a really good piece of information.
Thanks for reminding me on that, because I will send the link also on the, I'll send it to you to send it out to everyone. So people can see what I'm talking about, because, you know, if you can start with some schools, and it's also conservation, because when the kids hear that it's the most trafficked, smuggled animal in the world, it's pangolin. And there is no usefulness to it anyway. It's just a belief. You know, they are going to grow up to become, at least with some concern for animals, you know, they're going to go into conservation or travel to Africa, knowing it's not a zoo.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, thanks a lot, Eric.
So Nrupesh, let's jump into questions. Thank you, first of all. Sorry, I shouldn't have.
Absolutely pleasure.
Yeah, for your perspectives, very valuable. And it's based in doing it. It's based in the insights of actually like operating and having success in a variety of fields now. So Let's jump into questions. So the first question here is from Michelle. Michelle from Africa's Finest Safaris. Even before the COVID pandemic, I predicted that direct marketing to clients through my website and hosting boutique events to selected groups would be the future of marketing for especially our African safari market, as opposed to relying purely on our travel agencies. Will we see this being more prevalent for attracting travelers than the traditional travel agency route, especially now with this new tourism landscape paved out with COVID globally?
Yeah, hi Michelle. I would, yes, in luxury markets, yes, because they're going to go more with referrals than any other source of marketing initially for a year or 2 years, because they want to be absolutely sure it's a place where at least one of their network has visited post-COVID, if you're talking about post-COVID. But mid-range family visits and budget travelers, they are just dying to just jump on a plane and go somewhere. They know COVID has not affected younger people. A lot of them are just waiting for the lockdown to be done so the flights can resume, they can go. And they're willing to take the risk, if I may say, more than the luxury clients. Even if they're young luxury clients, they would be worried. But just backpackers, I think there will be a lot of backpackers and a lot of young couples going through Africa and other places very soon once the lockdown opens up. Because, they also want to go to a place where there are not many tourists around, even in peak season, which is the other side of it, where, Etosha or the reserves in Namibia, the national parks, they're usually full August, September, they're quite full to October. And if they come now when the flights open, there'll be nobody there. And the wildlife is still there. In fact, it's growing because of lack of tourists. So those are the two sides to it. So I would say, Michelle, if your market is high-end luxury clients, then yes, you should focus on word of mouth, boutique events, any other strategic tie-ups with those kind of companies in America and other places. But online would be I feel it will be lower bookings in online for luxury travels. But at the same time, 80% of the accommodations and agents and operators in Namibia are mid-range, I would say. So those have a different problem. I'm just going to jump onto the second question is because it continues. What can a small lodge do to compete with bigger lodges and hotels that are in the same area? This is where, what's his name, Fan Marai, if you're listening in, this is where your marketing to a particular section of people will come into play, where hotels, bigger lodges have a lot more overheads. They have a lot more losses to cover. And if you're a smaller campsite, a smaller lodge nearby, try to do a bit more marketing now by yourself. Talk to the local tour operators. Tell them what they have, what you are offering, what you have. So they will know about you when they are making a package together. And they'll be able to compare your prices with the bigger lodges and hotels, because there will be a massive difference in pricing once the borders open up. Because the smaller guys who didn't have a big loss will still be able to offer the same prices. But the bigger companies will not be able to continue taking losses because they will have a lot of funding that has to go back to wherever the assistance came from during the crisis. So you have to look at both sides of it. So if you're a small operator, you might have a small lodge or small campsite, you have a bigger chance of getting clients going forward. And with what local tourism has shown, I think about 20-25% of the people that posted specials, most of us didn't even know they existed in Namibia. Those destinations, those campsites, those lodges. And now that they know about it, a lot of them have opportunity to market it still to a local company at the same time as foreign companies, which they never had before. They never had a platform to show themselves what they do. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Michelle. But if not, yeah, we can chat about it a bit later.
Awesome. Thank you, Nrupesh. Thank you so much for your time and your insight and your wisdom in these areas. It was really special having you on. And
thank you very much.
Glad that you were able to also just covering some of those questions. I think that on that point, you're correct in your answers there.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, just what I think what you guys are doing is really interesting. You are definitely innovating in a space that hasn't had a good degree of innovation in a long time. So I definitely appreciate you guys or you coming on.
No, thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Right.
I'm sure we'll do a few more of these going forward.
Yeah, this is like, we kind of put this summit together. This is the first time that we've run it, and I've run tons of webinars. Turns out that summits are a little bit of a different beast. So we will be running summits in the future, and hopefully we'd love to have you back on as a speaker.
Perfect.
As well.
Now, count me in.
Yeah. Also, just to briefly touch on the questions from Michelle and Van Marai, the last talk of the day, which is the talk that I'm going to be giving, is
that's at 9 o'clock at night in Namibia.
Yeah, it's going to be late, and I know it's late for you guys, but
no, it's not. It's fun.
Well, if you manage to catch it, I'm specifically going to be going through. I'm going to lay out the exact method and process that we use, answering those exact questions. How do we as a smaller lodge compete with the bigger lodges? And it's working for us. We're full. We're 100% full right now. So I would love to share that with you guys. If you're able to jump on at 9, we're going to be sharing that talk. And it talks about looking at boutique events, and we not only are we full, but it's being full, circumnavigating a lot of the previous marketing channels that we use, agencies and third parties that you have to pay commissions to. We don't pay to anyone anymore. So how do we do that?
Wow.
I'll be covering that as well. Yeah. Anyway, that wasn't to toot my own horn. That was just saying, obviously there's a question there, and I think there'd be an interesting process for you guys. So thank you for your questions. Thank you, Nrupesh. Really appreciate your time.